Rio Grande Valley of Texas. So I cannot go any further south and still be in the country, and I can't go any further east and be on land. So that kind of gives you an idea of my geography. Some of the things we talked about locally down there is not having any irrigation water because Mexico hasn't honored a federal international water treaty from the 1940s. So every area is definitely has its own unique challenges, and I'm excited to see what we can do up here, working with Tyler and Helen. Helen, actually, I guess, is the first person that kind of asked me to come to the Colby region and see what we could come up with, which AEA works not just nationally, but internationally. We have a footprint in several different countries, but we're formed in the Indiana area, Ohio. So we've been doing this since 2006, I think is when John formed the company. But let me ask this question first. How many here are familiar with AEA or Advancing Eagle Ag? Any of you? What about John Kemp or the Regenerative Ag podcast? Yeah, a lot of people that come to me initially have listened to the podcast and they may not be familiar with the company that's doing the groundwork. So let me first just tell you a little bit about what we do. We were formed as a consulting company for regenerative agriculture, which, I mean, regenerative agriculture is just a term out there. Don't let that term scare you, because, you know, sustainable agriculture, regenerative agriculture, conventional agriculture, we can go on and on and on. The difference is just how we approach things mentally, but at the end of the day, the goal is still the same, to get you, the farmer, the most profit and get you to achieve the goals that you have. So, you know, those are conversations we have to have one-on-one and identify, because I can't tell you what your goal is. But, so we started as a consulting company. John what he kind of discovered as he went along was that he wasn't moving the needle with the products that were available to him at the time. And his family is very much into, or was at the time, very much into regular conventional agriculture, still running the chemical seed fertilizer business there at their Ohio town. So, you know, a lot of similarities from where we've all kind of come from. And as a result of not having products that move the needle, that's why we now have roughly 30 different biological and mineral nutrition products. So our approach is very similar to what Tyler has been doing, what has kind of gotten him started with the compost extract. I would say, and I want this to be an interactive conversation. I don't want to just be up here preaching to you, or I'll put you on this thing after lunch. But basically, kind of my goal and Tyler's goal with his extract business and what he showcased with what he's doing is to take it to the next level. So if you're interested in what he's doing with the compost, reducing inputs and whatnot, now we're taking it to the next step by introducing SAP testing. So SAP testing is where Tyler's not going to have to guess what nutrients he's either excessive in or deficient in. We're going to pinpoint those things and attack them. What I find in a lot of the arid regions, from the Texas Panhandle north into Kansas, it's beyond that, but arid regions in general, I find a lot of excessive nitrogen in the system. And a lot of times, I'm looking at a SAP test, and it's in the form of nitrate. Can anyone tell me if that's good or bad? Anyone have an idea?
Bad.
Bad. Why is it bad?
It's just 50-50.
Well, you have the right answer. If you have excessive nitrates in your system, it will kill you in this type of dry environment because it takes 30% more water. You convert that nitrogen into a completely synthesized protein for that plant to utilize. So what's your number one limiting factor in this area? water. So making and understanding those relationships and how to switch over to other products. I mean, some of this is as simple as switching to a different product. But I think a good example of how the SAP test comes into play is I was doing, my cousin farms 9,000 acres of dryland, cotton, wheat, and cattle. I think they do a little bit of brainstorming and necessity now. North of Abilene, Texas. That area has not had regular rainfall in quite some time. I mean, it used to be, when my grandfather farmed in that region, you could pretty much bank on 2 bale cotton, which would be the equivalent of a good wheat crop or a good grain sorting crop here. We split a 60-acre field 2 years ago, my first full season at AEA. He ran half of that with his conventional program, half of it with the program that I put together for him. We spent $10 an acre less. We took all the insecticide off. We took all the fungicide off, except for what was on the seeds that he purchased. We ended up doubling his yield. But here's the thing that really caught my attention, was that during that first SAP review, I'm on the phone with him literally while he's on the sprayer. And I'm looking at both treatment zones. Both of them have excessive levels of nitrate and total nitrogen. What are you doing? Oh, I'm spraying nitrogen. Why? Well, my chemical rep said I needed to. Why? We're friends, that's what we've always done. You know, I've got the agronomy degree from Tech. I'm a certified crop advisor. Folks, I've been in that situation where why do we do something? Because we've always done it. I mean, we're all a product of what we've been taught. And that's where it's been fun for me as an agronomist to work at AEA, have that SAP test, and learn the relationship between nutrients, what we need, what we don't need. Because it's just as important what's excessive as what's deficient. And a lot of times, we can address the deficiency and bring down that excessive level of nutrient. But at the same time, we seem to always want to apply what is in that excessive range, because it's usually a PK. So, one of the things that excites me about working with Tyler and the program that he's doing is that I've worked with a couple of other companies similar to his in Texas. And one really stood out to me this year in East Texas, of all places, with excessive rainfall. I mean, you would think sugar sand, it had a lot of organic matter, because it always rains around Houston, so on and so forth. But that ground was completely, it had been abused historically, both from overfarming of peanuts and cotton, as well as the oil field coming in and putting a site on there. So I mean, it was literally sugar sand, peach sand. Hardly growing anything. Within 1 year, actually 9 months, we went in there with compost extract that one of his acquaintances was doing, and then we've also put on our soil primer and seed treatment, and then a couple of foliars on the cover crop. And you could literally dig that cover crop up and hold the soil in your hand. It took place that quickly. When you talk about aggregation, I've seen it. Now, I'm not going to tell any of you to go do that program, because that was about a $250 an acre program if we broke it out. But for what they were doing, they were looking for a quick regeneration of the ground. We showed it was possible in less than a year. So I fully expect to see these same kind of things over a 5-year period in running regular rates. Kansas or any other dry situation. How many are irrigated here, or have some irrigated ground? A couple of you. So I just worked an irrigated corn program with a grower here in Kansas, about 2 hours southwest of here. He's got irrigated, he's got dry land, and here's where things get fun. Do you expect me? I'm going to just address you two guys, because y'all are here easy for me to take on. You expect my program to be the same on irrigated versus dry land?
Pretty much.
Pretty much. Why?
It's the same dynamics, pretty much same soil, more irrigation, but the soils are probably pretty close to the same.
Okay, I can see that. Now, from a realistic budget standpoint, should it be the same?
No.
Thank you. So his program on dry land is just over $50, the way I've got it built right now. On irrigated, it's about 150 to 200, depending on how many foliar feeds we end up doing. So definitely take into consideration when we're working these programs, what your conditions are. So it's very much a two-way conversation. And that's another reason I'm excited to work with Tyler, because he'll be here to talk to you and we'll be able to have a conversation. And I fully expect myself and any of you that decide to work with us to be on that call at the same time, so we can get to the bottom of things and figure it out instead of just, let's go spray nitrogen because we've always done it. But, the other thing, as far as our full program, is a little bit different when it's just ourselves versus when we're working with someone that's got a compost extract like Tyler. And that's not a bad thing. It's another tool in the toolbox to really get the whole program home and get the whole process sped up. So I think y'all are very fortunate to have Tyler doing what he's doing, and I'm fortunate to have him bring us in so that we can complete connecting the dots, because once we get the sap piece in there and we start connecting the nutrition side as well as supporting all of the biology, I think it's a home run for everyone involved. Go ahead.
So you keep using the abbreviation SAP. What's
Yes.
the difference between the SAP test and soil test?
Well, I thought you were gonna go with tissue test, but that's a good question too. The SAP is just like let me back up. SAP would be similar to a tissue test. So it's completely separate from your soil test. I still like to see soil tests, and especially working with the grower the first year. So I'm usually recommending a total nutrient digestion test, so I know if you've got the nutrient in the soil, because if you don't have it, then I don't care how much biology you put, it's not gonna fix the problem. But the biology can make an immobile nutrient mobile so that the plant is being able to take it up. And notice I didn't say soluble, I said mobile. But as far as the difference in sap and tissue, what you're looking at there is sap would be very similar to a blood test on any of us in this room. So it's telling us what that plant is actually utilizing and how it's utilizing it, instead of a tissue test telling me what the total makeup of that leaf is. Because if you go out today and spray, I don't care what, any nutrient on that plant, it doesn't get taken up into the leaf, is it being effective? It's still going to show up on a tissue test, but it will not show up on a sap test. That's one of the big differences. And it allows us also to be more proactive, because we can basically start predicting deficiencies and trends, especially the more sap tests we have over a season or multiple seasons. But even within that one sap test, I can predict about 3 weeks out, instead of just having to react on what that tissue test is showing. So it gives us a little more time to really start preparing. So that's, on corn, I mean, the crops that y'all are growing around here, I would say an absolute minimum of 2 tests a year, but preferably 3 or 4. And the more years you do it, the more you'll enjoy having that extra data point, so that even me, if I was to sit down with any of you that gave me 3 years of sap data, I could probably pretty much write out your program, start to finish, right now, and then the only variable is pretty much the weather, which we know that, yeah. Y'all know, tell me if it's gonna rain or not, and we'll all be rich. Now, phosphorus and potassium is one that probably should touch on just a tad. I know you pretty much pulled off all your phosphorus. What about potassium?
I don't really apply a lot of potassium. pounds of nitrogen, a little bit of ammonia thiosulfate, black max nutrient, and a micro pack. And that's kind of been my whole program.
You know, the reason I asked that question is because coming from the conventional world, I was scared to death when I was first told, hey, you can tell your customer that if they put soil primer on, they don't need phosphorus or potassium this year. I was like, what? Biology's gonna get all of that accessible the first year? And I've seen it enough now that I can 100% faithfully look you straight in the eye and say, yes. You do not have to put on phosphorus, potassium fertilizer if your biology is correct in the soil. Now, we take I would say a similar approach, but a little bit different approach than what Tyler's doing with the extract. Of course, we do sell more of a bug than a jug type product with the Spectrum and the BioCoat Gold. But kind of, it's all the same type of principles. The one thing that's different than, and where I think biology in general has gotten a bad rap, is everyone and their dog has a biological product right now come and present you. Who here has had just a biology salesman come and try to sell you, let's say 3 or 4 different products? Just raise your hand. Yeah, I mean, y'all are being sold to, right? Is anyone trying to solve a problem for you? And that's where it's been fun at AEA to actually look and see what the root cause is and solve the problem. So we're no better than the communication though. So when you're working with someone like us, you've got to communicate. Because if I don't know it, I can't help you. But once we start seeing relationships, and even failure is something that needs to be communicated, so we figure out what happened. So, you know, don't be afraid of some of these things that fail. But what I wanted, where I got away from it, I wanted to mention is, we've all been sold or sold at multiple biological products, but who has tried to sell you a biological program? Because the program is the key to this. I've seen it myself firsthand, not necessarily AEA because we do sell it as a program, but other biological products that I've represented in the past, where it works on this fence post, but it doesn't work on that fence post. And the reason behind that is who in this room wants to just go sit on the curb out here and be left there overnight? Anybody? I didn't give you any food. I didn't give you any shelter. You're just gonna go sit on the curb. And that's what we do with a lot of companies are doing with their biologicals and expecting them to work. So that's where, you know, with compost or like our soil primer, we're giving the food source, we're giving the home, and that's where things work. So I just wanted to make sure I state that regardless if you work with us or not, so you understand how to be successful when you're looking at these programs. What else should we talk about, Tyler?
When are good times to go take a sap analysis? Like what part of the day, what part of the growing season? When are those periods where you're gonna see the biggest bang from your buck? Pulling that sap test and then applying something in that next 2 weeks where it's telling you you need it.
Good question. So as far as sap collection, and this is why Tyler is going to be the guinea pig out there for you. You already told me you're gonna take a sap.
I did.
So sap has to be collected before 10 o'clock in the morning because of the photosynthesis cycle. If it gets collected past that, then the plant system, you know, it's just like any of us in here. What do you want to do right now after lunch? You want to take a nap? So the plant's the same way. It changes the way it's metabolizing during the day. So that's why we want to make sure while that plant's actively photosynthesizing, which is in the morning, that we are taking that sample. And the other thing is, you know, let's pretend every table in this room is your field. If these let's say 4 rows of tables represent the bulk of the field, then I'm going to take the sample, let's say at that field or that table every single time. I'm not gonna take it at that table one time and jump over and take it at that table. You take it in a consistent manner so that you make sure you're getting stackability time over time, where we can track those trends instead of taking it here and then, oh, let's jump to the very back table that's completely different. No, that needs to be a completely different sample. So that's something, we haven't gone over that yet, Tyler. I've got to train SAC techs or the local people that are doing that. But, yeah, that's a good question. The other thing too, you showed the roots with all of the exudates on them. A lot of people ask me, well, how do I protect the plant from disease, root disease and root worms, things like that? It's getting those root exudates on there as quickly as possible. And that's one of the things, I mean, we've all been talked to about soil health, and I've watched Kansas pretty closely on social media, and I want to congratulate the state in general, because y'all pay attention to these things way more than other states. So that's something that I've been very impressed with. But AEA, we take an approach of let's give the plant the nutrition it needs to build the sugars it needs to feed the roots, because we want to build those root exudates and let the plant feed the soil and produce a healthy soil. So you don't hear that approach very often, but that's a big part of when we're saying, hey, let's go do a foliar nutrition application. That's one of the reasons why, because we want to make sure that those relationships are happening, getting full protein synthesis, pushing the sugars, or building the sugars and pushing everything where it needs to go and out the root. I mean, we could get into, let me ask this question. Because this is something that hasn't been as mainstream, and it's actually surprised me the last week and a half that as many people know about it as they do. But who is in here has heard of rhizophagy cycle? Yeah, let's say maybe 10% of you. That's better than zero. You talk about the rhizophagy cycle, Brian?
Yeah, he's just asking what
Yeah.
it was, so I just repeated for him.
Yeah. Did you raise your hand?
Yeah.
Okay. So Brian and I met like 2 weeks ago at Green Cover, so he's already heard some of this stuff, so he's kind of the cheater here right now. But, this completely blew my mind. It comes out of Rutgers from Dr. James White. We've all been, don't let me get off the subject without talking about things around the world.
Okay.
We've all been taught that for fertilizer and nutrients, in order to get in the plant, have to be what?
Plant available?
Another word I'm looking for.
More soluble.
Bingo. What if I told you that the way the plants naturally get their nutrients is by eating the biology that's in the soil? Has anyone ever told you that? Because that's basically what the rhizophagy cycle is. The plant is communicating with the biology, and the biology that's carrying the nutrient that that plant needs is getting consumed by the root, ripped apart in the root, and then spit back out while the plant takes the nutrient that microbe is carrying. I never got taught that in school. Anyone else get taught that in school? But that's where what we see with 1034 comes into play. Now, Brian, do you remember seeing those pictures from Rodney Doan? Are you comfortable kind of saying what he?
I'm not good at re-explaining it, but I mean.
So, basically, now Rodney farms in central Kansas, so this is a fellow local farmer. He did, and I don't remember his rate of 1034, but he did his regular program in 20 acre strips versus our program, where we ran a gallon of what is our planter solution product. So not really apples to apples, a lot more nitrogen heavy, soluble fertilizer versus a full packaged natural fertility product. And we also had some biology in there, if I remember correctly. But early on, the plants for the 1034 were just blowing and going. Nice, tall, green. I mean, which one would you say would have won based off those early pictures?
Oh, by far, the 1034, I mean, you just drove, like, that looked like an ideal cornfield in those pictures.
Couldn't have said it better. We get into about the middle of the season. That whole relationship flipped. The part that was treated with 1034-0 started dying back, not growing as well. Disease started creeping in, where we had the natural fertility program, or regenerative program, whatever you want to call it. Started flourishing, green, stayed green throughout the end of the season. No, I shouldn't say no disease pressure, but much less disease pressure. What do y'all think the difference was in yield? Any guesses? 0. So when people tell me that a starter fertilizer doesn't work, I can 100% believe it, because it was more than likely a soluble fertilizer and was not relating to the biological needs of that plant, as we see later on in the season. So there's lots of cool little things that you'll see as you start looking at these biological programs. Because at the end of the day, that's what compost is, right?
What was the difference in those programs? You said there was 0 yield difference. What was the input cost difference?
He hasn't had those numbers available yet, so I can't give you that. But, you know, it was very similar to like my cousin's field. We actually spent $10 less per acre with the AEA program versus their conventional program, while doubling the yield. But I'm not gonna come to your farm and say we're gonna double the yield next year. That'd be crazy. But if we start getting these nutrient relationships right, the end goal is always to build a more resilient plant that can get through the stresses that we have to endure, whether it be the dry years that you normally have or even a wet year. So, for me, the last 3 years have been the most exciting of my career, just seeing it firsthand as well as getting to help farmers see it on their own farms. So, questions? Brian, I want to pick on you. You had 2 weeks to think of how to grill me.
I guess for people who are just starting down this road, I mean, we've heard from Tyler, but what would you recommend, guys, like, where would you start, like a starting point?
I like that question because it's so simple. You can go with the full program if you want to, but the easiest place to start is what Tyler showed with the seed tree. Get the biology on the seed and let it start to work. I mean, I can't speak for the compost extract, I haven't seen the result in lieu of, you know, combination with BioCoat Gold and that. I can tell you, as a standalone product, BioCoat Gold, which, let me tell you what's in it, basically 8 strains of mycorrhizal fungi and about 10 different strains of different fixers and all that for your NPK and everything else, as far as bacteria. It's about $3.50 an acre on row crops, so a very low cost starting place. On dryland wheat in the Dakotas, it has shown a consistent 2 bushel advantage. On corn in Wisconsin, it showed a consistent 5 bushel advantage across various varieties. I've seen it on forage sorghum with sap, and they didn't take it to harvest, but on sap alone, I saw basically every nutrient on there higher where we had the BioCoat Gold, and also earlier head immersion and all our plants when we got into that flag group stage, so that could come into play on grain sorghum as well. But that's a nice, easy starting place. And I think with the combination of the extract, that will just help feed the biology that's there, plus give the extra biology boost from that extract. So you don't have to go all or nothing on the switching. I work with very conventional growers that start there, and we'll just kind of start doing some foliar applications. A regenerative program can look nearly identical to what you're used to in a conventional program, as far as logistics. It's just a matter of, we're making sure we're getting the right source and the right nutrient at the right time. So when you talk about the 4 Rs, and then, yeah, we're talking some same type of stuff, but it's just a little bit different approach, because we're always supporting biology. Any questions? I don't like preaching, but my dad's a retired Lutheran pastor, so y'all gotta keep me honest here.
You wanna talk a bit about what's in that soil primer that you guys do in your traditional?
Yeah, so soil primer soil primer can be a little bit of a controversial product to talk about, and I say that because of the price point. Because we've gotta I don't wanna sell you an addition. I wanna say that very clearly. I do not want to sell an addition to your program. Soil primer, though, is kind of the foundation of building up getting the soil ready for everything else to happen. Like I was saying, that's the one program where I can confidently, if you got the nutrient in the soil, tell you that we can get off of P&K for fertility year 1. And we actually apply it in the fall, is when we see the best benefit as far as being able to pull off of those inputs. The only kicker is it's about a $60,000 application, but it's 3 products. Now, I've also done it in the spring on the planter where we're cutting back and on the rate, so we can get it in that $25, $30 range too, where budgets are definitely tight. Or we can pull components apart. So you're getting Rejuvenate, C-Shield, and Spectrum. So if you take out the Spectrum by itself, it is basically identical in cost to pretty much any biological product out there. I had this conversation with a dealer last week. And then you've got the Rejuvenate, which has your sugars and other components in there. Rejuvenate's a very interesting product. And if you wanted to do nothing more than put something out there to make the biology in the soil work more for you, I would go with Rejuvenate. And then C-Shield, which unless you're organic, you can switch to C-Guard, which is the non-organic C-Shield. It's a fish hydroxide product is what it is. But those products together is where we give the home, the food, and the biology all together for the soil. And you can really look at it as the overall starting place if you're looking long term. But in a dry land condition like what y'all have here, I'm much more conservative with that product, in that program. And this is a perfect place where I think the compost could be a better answer than running that program.
Yeah, I've seen it stand up obviously on its own with results that we've shown. And, as you're putting that whole compost out there, you're getting a lot of the home and the food source with it. It's just naturally in the compost, and then we can boost that any way we want to. The various products he talked about.
Yeah, I think a little bit of Rejuvenate would work good in the compost. The other thing is the C-Shield or C-Guard is basically fungal food. So if you're wanting to build your fungal populations, that product alone would be a good way to do that. And that was actually a big component of what I ran in furrow on the top of that I mentioned. We ran 2 gallons per acre, which I basically matched the nitrogen budget that they had. We pulled off their synthetic nitrogen and put the C-Shield on.
Is Tyler gonna keep AA products on hand?
If he doesn't, we actually have a warehouse in Stock City that we can get stuff up here real quick. Or if our Stock City warehouse is out, manufacturing's in Aurora.
So we can get them to you,
Pretty quick.
whatever you need, what kind of volumes you need. So, like I said, communication's the number one thing. Letting us know what you're gonna need ahead of time so we can have it in hand.
Yeah, and as far as SAP and getting SAP results, that's probably something I should touch on. Tyler and I, fully work the details out on this, but just our conversation, Tyler will take care of getting SAP test work and taken, and then those will come back into our team. More than likely, it'll be myself, but it could be the agronomist in Lubbock that will be reading those and getting results back to Tyler. We can have one-on-one conversations with Tyler, myself, and each of you, so that y'all can kind of understand, and Tyler knows what to put out for you, or what you're gonna put out yourself. But please understand, this is year one with the relationship between Tyler and AEA, so we gotta work out a few kinks, but we gotta start somewhere. And I think we're both excited to help you all succeed. Anything else? I'll be hanging around here for a little